Hi, and welcome to Superintendents Roundtable. I'm Deborah Vinsel, the CEO here at Thurston Community Media. Periodically, we invite the superintendents from the 4 largest districts in Thurston County to come to the studio and talk about education in our community. And this is our first roundtable for the 2022-23 school year. And we're so excited to have people back in the studio. We did a series of Zoom roundtables. Right. I'm not sure you could call it a roundtable when it's on Zoom. And we had one opportunity to meet last year in a very kind of different setup, but very excited to have you all here at the table. But we do have a couple of new faces here at the table for today. Would like to welcome Carole Meyer, who's the interim superintendent at the Tumwater Schools. Welcome back Brian Wharton from the Yelm Schools and Patrick Murphy from the Olympia School District. And sitting in for Superintendent Deborah Clements is Troy Myers, the assistant superintendent at the North Thurston School.
Troy Oliver.
I'm sorry. Troy Oliver, thank you, from the North Thurston Public Schools. I think my brain got ahead of my mouth on that one. But welcome back. We're glad to have you all and glad we could do this in person and have some time to talk about education. So we know that the last 2 years have been anything but normal. Although this school year seemed to start out in had a more normal feel, whatever normal is, but had a more traditional feel to it, let's put it that way. So how has the year started? And I'm going to give you the opportunity to go first, Carole.
Thank you. I think we are referring to it as the new normal. It feels like the new normal, but I don't know that we're ready to take a deep breath yet. Mm-hmm. Our staff and students are all, in class. They're excited to be there, and feels like the new normal.
Good. How are things out in Yelm, Brian?
We've had a great start. Very excited. Students have returned and they're taking part in activities across our district at record high numbers. Really happy with staff. We had some leadership changeover in our district, and those administrators are doing wonderful work. We're trying not to use the word normal. We're looking towards new opportunities and new growth. So very excited through the first month of the school year.
And you opened some new buildings.
We did. Yeah. We opened a new elementary school this year. We opened a new middle school last year. Mm-hmm. And we're almost done with the final phases of that bond construction. We'll finish up in November.
Great.
So it's great.
Good. Patrick, what's going on in Olympia?
We had an opportunity to have a superintendent's meeting at their new elementary school. What's the name?
Southworth.
It's beautiful facility.
Really gorgeous.
It has been a really wonderful start to the school year in Olympia. We've talked about coming back better, really trying to take what we've learned from the tumultuous last couple of years, like you said, Deb, and applying what we've learned and try and do that better. But we also, what I was really happy we were finally able to do, because we had been planning this for a couple of years, is we did a big staff kickoff in person to start the year, and we did that outdoors at Ingersoll Stadium. We had over 1,000 people there. We had students there. We bussed everybody in. We had the dance teams, the drill teams, cheer, different athletic teams that won state championships. We had a wonderful speaker that came in and talked about some of the work on becoming a more equitable school district, Jamad Canley, and it was just a fantastic start, and it really just set us up beautifully for the beginning of the year. So been out in our schools quite a bit, and I can't wait each time I get to go out, because it's just wonderful to see all of our students learning. And yeah, it's felt good, and we're going to continue to try and, like I said, get better with each day.
And Troy Oliver, get that right this time. North Thurston, how are things going?
Yeah, similar to the other districts. We got off to a really good start. We were able to staff up in some key areas, transportation being one of those, so that's really been important to get our kids to and from school. That's been fantastic. Our class sizes look really good. We're able to fulfill our hard-to-fill special education classes, so our students are being supported from day one, and it's been a really good start. And just like Patrick said, just being in the buildings and having that vibe and that energy that students bring on a daily basis with our staff, it's outstanding, and we're really pleased with the way things are going so far.
Great. Well, and I know that not just in the schools, but just community-wide, the fact that we are now in so many places having face-to-face opportunities, at performing arts and sporting things, and here in the studio, it's an entirely different kind of energy to have that. So it's so exciting to hear that things are going so well at the beginning of the school year. I want to talk a little bit about things, things are good, but I want to talk a little about some challenges. You mentioned, Troy, you mentioned staffing for transportation. That was one of the last things we talked about at our last roundtable, was the challenges in transportation. So Brian, I'm going to give you a chance to start on this one. What are some of the challenges that you anticipate potentially this year, and the opportunities that maybe those challenges provide?
We've, like everyone else, we are minimally fully staffed, if that means anything. We have enough drivers to cover our routes on a daily basis. We do struggle if we have to transport a team at the same time we're trying to get other students home. I think the districts are facing that as well. But it's created new ways to recruit. We're finding, we're recruiting bus drivers at the farmers market on weekends. We're going out to because people want to go out right now and do things. So we're trying to get our recruitment going at those types of events, and we're being very successful. We struggled a little bit at the beginning of the year with supply chain on food, and we were able to work around a lot of those. Shopping is very creative sometimes, but those issues are resolving themselves. We had 5 schools that moved on to the community eligibility provision, which means all students eat for free in those 5 schools based on a variety of factors that are there in those schools. And that's been a wonderful thing, but it also creates challenges in terms of structure and systems that our staff has to work with. We were really excited that we're fully staffed to start the year across the board in all of our certificated and classified positions. We had a very, very good summer and good spring in that respect. One of the challenges that's becoming an opportunity is we are recruiting very hard to have student teachers come to our district, and we have a program where we're trying to become the hub for student teachers, and that allows them to come in and student teach in our district. We're getting a lot of our graduates coming back through that program. Starts in our high school, starts in the junior year at Yelm High School, and works through Central Washington University. So we're hiring those folks as substitute teachers and then into the classroom, and that's been a very successful program. I think in the last 5 years we've hired 50 of our recent graduates, so we're pretty proud of that. So it's forcing us to look at things differently, but it's also allowing what educators do really well, and that's the creative side of us that find those solutions to problems.
Great. Patrick, challenges and opportunities in Olympia.
Sure. I would echo some things that Brian said. We're in a much better place on the transportation side of things. We learned from some of our neighbors some things that have helped us. We have hired a couple of wonderful trainers, Tommy and Teresa, in our transportation department. So we've got drivers queued up, and we're paying people during the training process, which is something that was new for us that other districts have been doing. And so like Brian said, I think we're down almost 95% reduction in cancellations or combinations of bus routes. It's almost been eliminated, but we're right on the razor's edge because we're always worried. Our administrators in transportation still drive buses very commonly, but we're feeling pretty good on that side. Really good teacher pool this year. We didn't do a lot of teacher hiring because our enrollment actually went down a little bit. We came in really close to projections, but we didn't do a lot of teacher hiring, but we hired some wonderful people. We have some new principals in our schools as well, some principals in new places. That all went well. The place where we're most challenged right now, Deb, in terms of hiring is on our paraeducator side. On our classified staff side, we have a number of open positions that are really hard to fill. And I've heard that repeated from other places around the district and around the region. The other thing I would mention is that because last year, which was a really challenging year, a lot of us experienced enrollment decline. It's about a 4 or 5% across the state average enrollment decline. But the state knew that it was really hard to predict with all of the unpredictability around COVID. So we got something called Enrollment Stabilization that I think we talked about last year that allowed us to keep staff that we had hired because we signed them to year-long contracts. That gave us really nice class sizes last year. Class sizes were pretty low. We gave everybody an upfront. That's not going to be the case this year. And we used to keep a contingency set aside that if numbers don't come in exactly where they're supposed to be at places, we can maybe add a teacher here or add some support over there. We said we're going to do that from within. We don't have extra resource to put towards that. So we came in right around our enrollment, but with 10,000 kids, they didn't come in exactly at the right places. So some schools were down and some schools were up, but overall we're about where so we had to move some teachers after the school year started. So that's been a challenge for us. We've had to say, you know, you don't have the numbers here to justify keeping that teacher, and they need them over here. And so that's hard because kids form relationships with their teachers, and parents form relationships with their teachers. So I know that's been tough. But that's been something that I think our teams have done a really nice job of processing and putting supports in place, but that's been a challenge for us.
So can I just loop back? So enrollment is pretty much what you had pre-COVID?
No.
Not there yet?
No.
Not yet.
No, we're probably down by at least 500 students from our high mark pre-COVID.
Okay.
We were expecting to be down about another 200 students this year, but we're only down about 100.
Yeah.
So we came in a little bit, but overall, we're about what we projected.
Because I know a lot of parents opted to not return to the classroom last year because things were, with vaccinations, everything was just so in flux. Is that what you think part of the issue is still people wanting to, they're COVID cautious, or are there other
I think there
variables?
is still a level of COVID caution out there. I think there's people that are worried about COVID still, especially at the elementary level, at the younger grades.
kids.
That's where we're not seeing it. But I don't know if Troy and Carole and others might speak to this, but one place where we really were like, that didn't come in the way we expected was our online learning programs.
Right.
So our online learning programs where we were like, boy, this is a great option. It's really robust. We've got this. We're expecting this many kids in there. We were off by like 50%, like dramatically below who we expected to show up for that. And so, which is good news for our neighborhood schools and our on-site schools because they went back to the classroom. But when you're predicting to have that many more and you've hired those teachers, sometimes you have to move them out into the regular classroom.
Gotcha.
That's been the case with us at Tumwater. We came in at about 50%, just under 50% of what we expected in our virtual academy. And so consequently, we have to move teachers into classrooms. So a lot of students and families chose to go back to brick and mortar buildings. And we just didn't anticipate that because we've had a very robust virtual program in the district for, I think, all through the last 2.5 years. So that was the surprise for us and created quite a challenge.
Okay.
We had a similar experience with our what we call Summit Virtual Academy. We opened last year. We finished last year with over 650 kids. Our principal of that school actually went out and put out a survey to all the families, anticipating some would go back to our brick and mortar schools. And we had a pretty good idea how many people were not going to stick with the virtual academy. We had a lot of people leave over the summer that we just didn't know. We went from over 600 to about 300. One of the complications with that is when your high school gets reduced in size, to offer a robust program that offers all of the credits and all the different areas that students need to graduate with the reduced staff becomes very difficult. And in some ways it costs us more money to maintain that program than it would have when we're fully staffed. So that's been a little bit of a complication for us, but we're working through that. The other thing is Brian mentioned the Community Eligibility Program for food service. Outstanding program. We have 7 of our schools that are CEP schools. One of the communication difficulties with that is if my child is in the elementary school and we don't qualify for free and reduced lunch, but all students in that school eat for free, but my middle schooler is not in a CEP program, how does that make sense for me as a family? And we're actually really looking forward to the possibility of Rake Dahl's request for all students in the state being free and reduced, because last year our number of students participating in our lunch program was up quite a little bit. Our breakfast program almost doubled last year over previous years, and it has dropped off again because of not having that free program.
And could, just for our viewers' sake, could you just explain what is the qualification for that program? Is it?
It's a variety of factors.
Right.
One being free and reduced lunch, and also the percent of students that are receiving services from a variety of state agencies. And the complication is normally, in regular traditional times, we would invite all families to fill out free and reduced lunch applications. So now it's a two-pronged approach where we have community eligibility. We have to ask parents to do a salary survey. And then in the non-CEP schools, we do the traditional application. I think I got that right. But it's a 40% factor of those students that are in state services. We think we're very close to having our whole district qualify, and probably 2 or 3% from that threshold. But it would be a great program, but it also kind of turning that into that opportunity. It gives us a renewed opportunity to talk to middle school families about college bound, because they do have to complete the scholarship, or not the scholarship, but the application materials for that, continuing on to make sure that students stay eligible for free and reduced lunch through high school, so they can qualify for scholarship money.
That's the big deal.
Yeah.
So the big deal is you've got this program that takes away the onerous nature of filling out forms so that kids can get food in their belly and be prepared to do the work. And that's awesome. It's like, hey, the whole school qualifies. You really don't even need cashiers at that point. You're just serving food.
Right.
Everybody's just coming through and you're giving food to everybody. But there's so many other things that come with that eligibility for free and reduced lunch, like college bound. I mean, that's a couple $100,000 that's available to your student when they go to college. If you don't fill out this form, you're going to miss out on that. And you got to do it before 8th grade. There's your title grants. There's your LAP grants that are all related to the people that fill out that. So it's kind of like it's this great thing, but it also causes some problems because we still want people to fill out that form.
Right. Well, thank you. And how about challenges and opportunities in Tumwater?
Well, like my colleagues, a lot of challenges around transportation. We're down in the double digits in our bus drivers, and we're doing some creative recruiting and marketing to try and get more drivers. And like I'm sure my colleagues have mentioned, that everybody in the transportation department that can drive is driving, all the way through to our mechanics at times. We're focusing on getting kids to school, so sometimes our athletic events are impacted by that, and that's still a challenge. But we do have drivers in the queue, and so we're hoping that that will resolve over the course of the year. And then we're starting a superintendent search. I'm the interim superintendent, so we'll be having some opportunities for community forums to hear from the community. And then another area that we're really focused on is the mental health and well-being of our staff and students. And so we're doing some work around primary and secondary trauma, not just for students, but also our staff. We've been through a lot in the last couple of years, and that's still a focus of concern for us.
Yeah, I've heard from parents, friends who have kids who are in middle school about just a general sense of anxiousness. I wouldn't necessarily call it anxiety, but just a little tension, a little tenseness about just pretty much everything.
When you bring up middle school,
Right.
It makes me think about the social media aspects that we've all dealt with, which is a new, well, it's not brand new, but it's definitely had an impact,
Right.
significant impact on education for our students, and just their ability to manage themselves on social media in healthy and appropriate ways.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
social media is always kind of an issue.
We'll be feeling the repercussions of this for years and years to come.
Yes.
So it's not just this year. I mean, there's some people that this will be manifested in ways for years and years to come, not just academically,
Right.
but through the
Well, just our society in
trauma.
general, our entire society. And this last 2 years has just been, well, they use the word unprecedented way too much, but certainly that is the word, and it has affected our community in ways that I think we do not recognize and will not recognize for a while.
It's understandable
Yeah.
that people are anxious.
Yeah.
Right, and I think some of the work that we're doing around secondary trauma is giving people an opening to develop a vocabulary, to do a self-assessment, to create a school building-wide or a department-wide plan around the trauma that they've experienced, both personally and in secondary ways.
Well, I think it's certain that the last couple of years have been a challenge just societally, and we're going to see things manifest themselves in ways that we have yet to understand. So we've recognized that we all have challenges and opportunities, that the opportunities that the challenges offer. But I also know you all have some key initiatives coming up. So I'm going to start with Patrick. Key initiatives coming up in the Olympia District in this school year.
Well, I think I'd start by just dovetailing with what Carole was saying around mental health. We're continuing to ramp up some things that we initiated during the COVID years with our federal dollars in terms of support services in our schools, family liaisons, social workers, implementing social emotional curriculum, K-12. Really thinking about advisory periods at the secondary level and walking through trauma and how you deal with stress. And if we don't serve the whole child and start with the physical and mental well-being, it doesn't matter. You can have the best lesson plan. That's not going to do anything. So I think I would say that's probably foremost. There's a couple other sort of big district-wide initiatives that we're working on in Olympia. And these we've been working on for quite some time. One is our board is committed to developing an equity policy to coincide with our existing strategic plan. And they put together a really incredible group of community members. We brought in Dr. Kimberly Armstrong to help facilitate that work. We had a work session last night. We're going to be going out and having authentic conversations in our community to help inform the creation. We want to co-create that policy together, to put some accountability in place for us. We know that historically, it's not just Olympia, it's everywhere. We have these disproportionate outcomes in our schools that impact students of color, students who receive special services, students impacted by poverty, and we've tried everything, all of us, to alleviate that without the success that we would want. So what are the things that we're going to do to really incorporate our student voices and our family voices into what we're doing? Because to me, that's the last thing that we need to do, and it's so overdue. Another thing that we've been talking about, and we think we talked about it before on this show, Deb, is the sacred cow of the school year calendar, right? So we have a balanced calendar committee, and our friends in North Thurston.
That's been discussed a couple places in the last year.
Our friends in North Thurston were kind of going down that road with the committee last year. We surveyed our community, over 3,000 people responded, and not surprisingly, we were really split. Some people thought it was a great idea. Some people said, haven't we been through enough change? There's a lot of trauma out there. And so we've brought in J. Marie Reish and her team to facilitate a community conversation. We got a pretty large exploratory committee together, and our hope is that we're going to come to some sort of decision. We might decide, nope, it's not for us, or we might decide this actually could be good, and if we did it, this is, I think, a model that might work. But our board has said very clearly that this is so entangled with all of us, it can't be unilaterally done by one district. So if Olympia says, this is what we think is a good idea, we would love to bring in all the districts, maybe through the ESD, maybe through TCTV. We could bring everybody in here, and we could have like a much more regional community conversation about it. But those are two big things that we're talking about in Olympia.
Well, and we would love to help you with that. If it comes to that, let us know how we can support that conversation. So. Initiatives in North Thurston.
Yeah, a couple things. So just like Olympia, we have K-12 social emotional learning curriculum. We've been doing it probably 5-6 years in the elementary, so that's really kind of a part of what happens in every one of our elementary classrooms. We're emerging in the middle school and high school in terms of that being something that is universally understood in terms of the importance as well as the implementation of it. So we're heading that direction, and that is going to be it's really important for our students, especially coming back from COVID. The other thing I'll mention, a couple other initiatives. One is on restorative practices. We started some restorative practices work pre-COVID, and when our students came back, we realized that their ability to problem solve, you think about high school kids, middle school kids, it's not great to begin with, right? So it atrophied significantly. So our restorative practices work and getting back to that is really important for us to teach our kids how to have dialogue, how to solve problems that don't involve your fists, quite frankly, and to really teach them those pieces. So we're working really hard throughout our system. It's really middle school and high school initiative where it's a big part of what we're doing. When a relationship is damaged, whether it be between a teacher and a student, two students, how do you restore that without sending a kid out for an extended period of time and then sacrificing their learning for a consequence, but restore a relationship. So that is something we're working on. The other piece is secondary grading practices. Our board held a community conversation last fall. We had done some pretty significant work at the secondary level around grading practices up to that point. And we had a community conversation and had parents and students say, it's great that all the teachers in English at the high school have the same grading structure, but when I go to social studies, it may be different. So how do we tighten that up, and how do we make it so where the student experience is consistent throughout the day, and the parent experience on the back end is, I know I don't have to have a different set of decoding skills for my child's grade in this content versus the other content. So how do we tighten that up? And then how do we use our tools like Skyward has been in place, and this is another opportunity for us going forward as we're going to transition to a new tool called Cumulative. Don't ask me how to spell it.
But these are tools for
grading.
Grading, okay.
Skyward's used for everything, but there's a grading module. So, and that's where parents can access all student information to include grades. So how do we communicate with parents in a way that they really understand where their child is and can help their students go on and not wait until a conference in October when now you have 3 weeks to make a difference. So those are things we're really working on in our district.
Okay. Key initiatives in Tumwater.
So Tumwater's been working on 3 pillars for the last couple years, and they include instructional excellence, systems of support, and fiscal stewardship. That's all wrapped around an initiative around equity. And so the district has gone through 2 of 5 modules with someone that Patrick mentioned, Jamad Canley, and we continued that. We also had big kickoff events this year around just all of those pillars of success, but also had Jamad with our Leadership Academy and also our kickoff with our entire staff. And so that equity work also has a component of a community group that works with us. So Jamad's working with us in that work, and also we'll be coming in to get student voice. I think that's an important aspect that over the last couple years we've not really had the opportunity to have student voice. So we'll be doing an all-day event with our 9th through 12th grade students, and then also a half-day event with each of our middle schools. And we'll be working with Jamad and probably my good friend Aaron Jones. So
Great. So you opened some new schools, but I know there's construction projects going elsewhere, and I think we get to start with you this time. Construction projects in North Thurston, or remodels?
We have a couple of significant remodels. Camacho Middle School is going through a complete modernization. They started that a year ago. We will transition into a new section of the building in November of this year as they're continuing to finish up the gym and some of those pieces. And the Camacho should be completely finished by next summer in time for the following school year, and that's a big project for us. Even bigger than the Camacho is the River Ridge High School remodel. That's going to be a 5-year project for us. We just broke ground on it this summer. They're working on the auxiliary gym and building a connection between the auxiliary gym and the main gym, which will be a nice piece. And then they'll begin working on the rest of the building, which will include next year bringing in about 20 portable classrooms to house students while we demolish essentially the existing building and rebuild that from the ground up on a significant part of the campus. So that's over $100 million project, and we're really proud of that work, but it's gonna take us a little while to get through that. And then some smaller projects we have. We replaced the roof at Seven Oaks Elementary School, which is in dire need of that, as well as a brand new roof out at Meadows. That said, those jobs aren't completely done. Brian talked about supply chain issues. We're waiting for some pieces to come in from the manufacturer to finish that project, and we hope it happens before we get too much weather.
I was going to say, I'm the daughter of a roofer, so I'm like, oh, the weather's going to close in on us pretty soon. So yeah, fingers crossed for you there. How about projects in Tumwater?
Lots. I want to not miss any on the list. So we're putting in solar panels with a grant at Black Hills High School. Super excited about that process. We've upgraded intercom and communication systems. We did have to replace the boilers in one of our older buildings, or a couple of our older buildings, the Tumwater High and Black Lake. We built illness rooms, so we had to have COVID rooms during COVID, and so we created health rooms that were two-part, and we did that in some of our elementary schools. We're remodeling the cosmetology program. We're the host district for New Market. We're adding a modular building for our LINKS program, and our LINKS program is our 18 to 21-year-old life skills group of students, and it's going to be right by the district office, so they'll have better access to busing, to get to jobs, etc. I have to read this one because I want to make sure I'm right. Seismic retrofits at Tumwater Middle School for the cafeteria. Yeah, that's new for me. And then we're replacing all of our parking lots lights with LEDs district-wide. So, big list.
How about you? What's going on out there?
Our new schools get a lot of attention, but we're getting close to the end of about a $125 million bond project. We opened Yelm Middle School a year ago, Southworth Elementary this fall, but we completed safety upgrades at every other school in our district. And we took advantage of an opportunity COVID provided us to work during the pandemic. And so we achieved some savings on those buildings, and it's allowing us to do additional programs. So we've replaced the HVAC systems in 3 of our older elementaries. We are continuing to do research on safety, all different types of ways to make sure that our technology that is in our entry systems is as strong as it can be. We completed significant upgrades to our athletic facilities. That's almost done over at Yelm Middle School now, so we'll have synthetic fields at both middle schools, our high school, baseball, fast pitch. Every varsity sport will have access to a synthetic field. One of the great things in doing that isn't just for our students, is that we are the Park and Recs of Yelm. So it's created opportunities for community use that we always said no to before because our fields were just torn up by the athletes that were using them. It's presenting some wonderful opportunities, and we think we've pushed what would be the next bond project off by more than 8 years. So it's going to save our community having to go through that process, even as we grow. So we're excited about that. And our board is really looking at what are the things now that we have a little bit of savings that maybe aren't emergent needs, but are ways to continuously bring our facilities up to the highest level that we can, that you might not have been able to touch otherwise. So we're happy that that is, the big stuff is nearing the completion, and then we get to go into research mode to see what's next.
Well, we totally understand the issue of maintaining technology. It can be difficult. It's like a wave. Sometimes you ride the wave, sometimes the wave crashes down on top of you, but staying ahead of that. But the supply chain issues too, and just we had an air conditioning situation here, and it took 6.5 months to get the units. So good luck with all of that, because I know that can really, one little link in the chain breaks and it throws the whole schedule off, for months and months down the road. So good luck with all that.
Do you want to hear a little bit about Olympia?
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course.
I mean, we don't have that much,
No,
so I'll be quick.
I'm so sorry, Patrick. Yes.
We don't have a lot.
Yes.
We're actually at the tail end of our bond, and so, I was at our wonderful foundation breakfast this morning at the brand new theater at Capitol High School. That was part of our bond. I'd say it's probably the nicest theater in Thurston County. It's beautiful. And we added classrooms at Olympia High, and many buildings at our classrooms and turf fields. And the tail end of this bond is our construction at Avanti High School, which is our choice high school. And it is at a building that was built in 1922. And the old district office used to be there before we moved over to the Olympian building. And so if you drive by that on, I think it's Legion Way there, you'll see all the trucks outside. And what every contractor I've talked to is that it says, I would much rather knock down a building and start from scratch than work with a really old building and try and do stuff. But it is a beautiful building, and so we really want to keep that. And so that's the big project we're doing there for our students at Avanti, and also our 18 to 21-year-old transition program for special needs students is also in that building as well. We do have solar panels at Olympia High School, and we got a grant. We're going to be adding them over at Marshall Middle School on the west side. So there's things that are happening, and we have a long list of places for our next bond that we're saying these are some important things. Doing a lot of work on HVAC and all the stuff that was talked about before, but it's always busy.
Well, I live on Legion. I drive by that building every day.
Yeah.
And for folks who don't know, it's catty corner from the Armory, which the city of Olympia is transitioning into an arts center. So when I saw everything happening there, I'm like, what are they doing, first of all? But it's so wonderful that the district wants to maintain that structure because it is historically relevant. Yeah. Not only to the city in general, but to that neighborhood. So
if you didn't know, it's actually the mirror image of Lincoln Elementary School up on the hill. They're the exact same building. They were built 1 year apart. One is half of a building, the other one's the full building. And you probably know from living in the area, Deb, the Avanti students are proud of their haunted house that they do every year. So that building is now under construction, and they're really thinking creatively about how they can do that just on the one side where the gym is, and they've done stuff. Yeah, so it's creativity.
I went to that haunted house last year, and it was a really good haunted house.
I went too, but didn't walk through it because I was too afraid. I had
a middle schooler and an elementary schooler with me, and we shrieked and giggled, and it was a good one. So I was so glad to see that the students were going to do something over in the gym building, because that was a question that came up. It's like, what's going to happen to the haunted house?
You can do a green ticket or a red ticket. You can do the really scary one or the not so scary
not
for the
so
little
scary
kids.
one, yeah.
And I was like, do you have another color that's like...
Cool. So well, I'll be real excited to see, when all the fencing comes down.
Yeah,
and
it'll be exciting.
See how, great. Okay, so we're going to kind of wrap things up here, because we want to give you an opportunity to share those, stories that have touched your heart with the beginning of the school year. So I guess we're back here, starting here, yeah.
So I got to ride a bus one morning, and Mark, our driver, picked myself and my assistant up, and right in front of the district office, and he honked and waved when he was coming around the bend, and we were just so excited to pick us up. And we went through his entire route, of course. What I was most impressed with Mark is that he knows every child's name. And this was like day 3. And he is welcoming them to the bus and getting them started on a great start for school. And of course, he's the last person they see at the end of the day. He visits with all their parents. He knows most of their names already as we're running through the neighborhoods. Mark shared a story, though, with us that he's retired, and he always wanted to be a bus driver. Because when he was a little kid, he loved his bus driver, and his bus driver really looked out for him. So as we're making our way through, we pass on the one side a whole group of dads who have like 10 kids, 12 kids out waiting for the buses, and they honk and wave because he's going to pick them up on the way back. Yeah. We get up to the top of the hill, and there's an older gentleman walking a dog. He must be there every single day at the same time. And Mark tells all the kids, we got to wave, and so all the children wave at this gentleman. We come around the neighborhood, and he waves Mark over and wants him to roll down the window, and he's just letting Mark know they're going south for a little while, so don't worry if you don't see me. This is how well Mark knows his route and his people. And so definitely a highlight of our week. We got great photos, and lined up in front of the bus when we got to school with Mark on one end and myself on the other. And so just a great start. It's just a great feeling.
It's wonderful for kids to have a person like that,
And they're so critical to the education system. Sure. They're the first person our children see, and the last one when they go home. Right. So love to have such a caring individual in our bus team.
Thumbs up, Mark.
Yep.
Okay. How about you, Brian? Any special stories?
I'll start with a shameless plug. We found out at the beginning of the year that we have the nation's largest FFA chapter. And so our kids are celebrating that, and big tradition in Yelm. Our students are very proud of that. But the story I'd like to share was our ribbon cutting at Southworth. And the design of that building was really focused on collaboration with the Nisqually tribe and with the Historical Commission in Yelm, the Historical Museum. And we were really fortunate that 10 members of the Southworth family were able to attend the ribbon cutting along with a large contingent from the Nisqually tribe. And one of the great stories was that long ago, probably 60 plus years ago, Mrs. Southworth was very well known in the community for reading to the native students in the library, and we were able to create a reading nook within the library. And watching the family go, and we have an infographic up in the library that explains that, and it also has a blown up piece where it was the dedication speech that Harry Southworth gave when the original building opened back in 1972. And to see our native partners and the Southworth family reading that and going through the building, and they both groups came back and said, "You got it right." And they appreciated the collaboration, they appreciated the nod to Yelm history, which is really important in our community, but most importantly, they said this is a school that everyone's going to be proud of. So that was a great way to kick off our year.
Congratulations. Patrick.
Well, I want to just quickly echo what Carole said about drivers. I got to work with a superintendent years ago that said, if you ever become a superintendent, ride the bus, especially the first day of school every year. So I've done that every year I've been at Olympia. This year I did it with Umberto, and similarly, just knew every kid, the families. It's just, they're so important, and I'm so grateful for that experience. My background is, I was a junior high teacher, a high school assistant principal, a middle school principal, so it's very secondary. So as a superintendent, I love to get out to the elementary schools just because it's not my background. And so just going out into classrooms, and particularly those littlest of the littles out in kindergarten, and just seeing the pride when they do something and the teacher has them share their example, and it's just wonderful. But I'll share this one little anecdote. I was actually out of Boston Harbor Elementary School, and I walked into a third grade classroom, and the teacher was sharing and a lesson about counting in larger units. And like if you count in larger units, you can really save yourself time. So like if you do 1 plus 100, you really don't want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to go 101, just real quickly. So boys and girls, is there any other way, an example of that you can think? And this little girl says, well, how about 100 plus 2? And she goes, that's a great example, 102. And is anybody else going, like 100 plus 3? And he said, that's great. And then this little boy says, how about 1,000,000 plus 1? And the teacher said, that's a great example, because imagine how long it would take you to count up to a million. This is a third grader. A third grader goes, you'd have to count to 10 for every second for about 24 hours before you would get to 1,000,000. And the teacher went, okay, and then went on to the next thing. And I was just like, well, I immediately got out my calculator. I was like, well, and just seeing that and the expressions on the kids' faces, there's just things you can't do on Zoom, and kids are just proud when they can share what they're doing and with their classmates and just sort of playing off one another. It's just wonderful, and I'm just so happy that we're back in school.
Yeah, so the first week of school, I was at one of our high schools, and they were having their first all-school assembly. A huge deal.
2.5 years.
You take that for granted, but it's seeing the kids and the energy and them all coming together, and the pride with the cheer staff that were leading the cheers, and the ASB that worked throughout the summer to prepare for that assembly and to provide that leadership was just amazing. The energy in the room, you could see the joy on the teachers' faces, the joy on the administrators' faces, that feeling of we are a school, which they lost that over the course of time, especially our high schools that had that sense of pride and that sense of we are River Ridge or we are Timberline. It atrophied, and it was just watching that event and watching everything around that, and the energy was like, all right, this feels good. This is going to be a good year.
Great. I'm so happy that the year has started on such positive notes. It's always wonderful to hear from you as we kind of roll into the year and see how it goes, especially after what we've all experienced for the last 2.5 years. So I think here at TCMedia we've had a little bit of that because we finally unlocked our doors in April. So having people in a building, a school building, and I used to be a teacher, so it's a living thing, and it needs the energy of students and teachers and activities to bring it to life. So I'm just so thrilled that you're all having such wonderful years. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us, because I know it can be hard to get everybody together, but we really do appreciate that you come and join us at the round table. So, and we'll do this again soon.
Thank you for the invitation.
You're more than welcome. And thank you for joining us. If you're the parent of a preschool child, please read with your child 20 minutes a day. It's one of the best things you can do to get them ready for learning and for education, and to get them curious about letters and words. And while you're at it, you might throw in a few little counting games to get them curious about math. If you're the parent of a school-age child, please get involved with your child's education. There's many ways you can help at school through volunteer activities. Talk to your child's teacher or their principal, or check out your school's website to see what might be possible for you. And as we've discussed before, there are employment opportunities in all of our school districts. Check the websites. Maybe you want to be a bus driver, maybe a substitute teacher. They're great ways to help support our youth as they learn. Thank you for joining us here at the Superintendents Roundtable. We'll see you again in a couple of months.